السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. We start our workshop today. It's about rabies from One Health perspective. I introduce Dr. Jacob Sintag. He is a veterinarian and holds a master and PhD in tropical animal production. He is now the deputy head of the Department of the Epidemiology and Public Health at the Swiss Tropical and Public Health Institute, Basel, Switzerland. His focus is the One Health program, and also he focuses on the tropical medicine in many of in West Africa, in addition to the Switzerland. Welcome, Dr. Jacob, and thank you for providing these lectures. Feel free to start, please.
Shukran, Sarhat. Assalamu alaikum. Etemena kuluhum sana Said. Unfortunately, my Arabic is not good enough to talk to you in Arabic, but I'm very happy to talk to you in English on my experience with rabies control, mostly in West and Central Africa. And I quickly walk you through the program of tonight. Before we go to Africa, I would like to have a brief look onto rabies control in Europe and also in Switzerland. And then we would go to Chad in the first place, but then also to Côte d'Ivoire, Mali, and also Liberia, to other African countries. And then we can discuss maybe briefly some questions on general approaches to effective control and elimination of rabies. I will not talk about the biology. I presume you know that it is a virus, that it is RNA virus, and it is exclusively transmitted by animal bites, that there is almost no human-to-human transmission. Actually, I never wanted to work on rabies. I don't know, but it was our Chadian partners who asked us if we can assist in establishing rabies control in Chad. I think I showed you some of these slides already, but today we will focus really on what is needed for effective control and elimination. One thing that is really for sure is that rabies can be eliminated, but it needs many different issues that we have to address that are more in the social and in the economic realm to really be able to properly eliminate it. And we will walk through these different issues. Where we are working in Africa, dogs are the main reservoir. And we were able to show that elimination of dog rabies is feasible. We walk you through these experiments, and we walk you also through the economics of rabies control. In rabies, you have basically two options. You have the option to treat all the people that are exposed to animal bite. You can vaccinate them. We call this post-exposure prophylaxis, because in contrast to many other diseases, in rabies, you can vaccinate after being exposed and still be saved. This is only possible because the virus needs time to reach the brain. This is most likely if you are bitten in the leg or in the arm, but it is often not possible if you have a bite in the face, because then the virus is too quickly in the brain so that you can no longer be protected in time. But the other option is, of course, well, if you only control rabies in humans, you can save humans from dying, but you will never eliminate rabies because the transmission will be ongoing in dogs or in other animals. And however, if you invest in mass vaccination of dogs, you can eventually interrupt transmission, and we can show that after 10 years, it is less costly to invest in dog mass vaccination compared to human post-exposure prophylaxis alone. This will be the One Health essence of today's class. I think we discussed it also already, but it is worth to be reiterated because the public health authorities notoriously ignore this fact. We will then also look at political and legal conditions and also social and technical conditions. We will look at novel financial instruments like development impact bonds, and we will show you ideas for a regional West and Central African mass vaccination strategy. So I start with the two important facts about rabies, that we have essentially a sylvatic cycle, which is mostly transmitted by foxes in Europe, but also raccoons and skunks and other animals in the North America. You can also have some wolves and other wild canidae in Eurasia. Actually, that is a question that I wanted to ask you. What is the main reservoir of rabies in Iraq? Is it dogs or is it also some wild animals? Can somebody respond on that? Just open your microphone if you want to say something.
Yes, Dr. Jacob, we hear you.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, what is the main reservoir of rabies in Iraq? Is it dogs or is it also some wild animals?
I think it's a stray dog, but it's, if somebody from the Dr. Antoine maybe have better idea on it, yeah. I will open the mic for him.
Yeah.
Antoine. Dr. Antoine, I could open.
You have to open your microphone.
Yes, I opened.
Yes.
Dr. Jacob, thank you for this important lecture. I'm speaking with you from United States, Chicago. Okay, it is maybe it is in fox or in wolves in Iraq, but I saw once rabid cow.
Yeah.
In cow has been get the disease. I think has been bitten by stray dogs.
Yeah.
And this is what I remember really because I left the country from 2012, and I remember when I was working in the dairy farm in Al Suwaira dairy farm station. I remember about foxes. It could be and wolves.
Okay, that's very important, and I think we can discuss this maybe further at the end of the talk. I think that then it is even good because I show you actually control efforts in two different ecosystems. So the first will be a look at Europe and specifically Switzerland, where mainly the foxes are the reservoirs and not the dogs. And
but
then,
really, doctor, I don't mean hasn't been actually diagnosed.
Yeah.
But I think that it could be that foxes and wolves, it could be, but I only maybe the stray dogs and cats are the reservoirs.
Okay, good, thank you. Actually, we will also talk about dogs because where we work mostly in Africa, it is mostly dogs who are the reservoir.
Yeah.
So we will discuss both ecosystems, but I wanted you to be aware of the two main systems that we see in rabies. So actually, in Switzerland, we had a rabies pioneer, that is Professor Franz Steck. You see him on the, here, this is Professor Steck. He invented the oral bait vaccine. So when he started with this vaccine, he used chicken head. You see here the chicken head that you can have in masses from the abattoirs. And he put in a vaccine capsule and also a tetracycline capsule. And these chicken heads, they were kept cold in these boxes. And they were distributed with helicopters to the burrows of the foxes, you know, where the fox have their houses. And unfortunately, one of these helicopters crashed into a cable of a cable car that was not on a map, and Professor Steck died in that crash. But I would like to pay tribute to my former professor. I had only one class with him, and after it was at the beginning of my own studies. But I will show you the wonderful job that he did, because with the oral bait vaccines that were distributed, mostly also with the help of the hunters who knew where the fox have their houses, we could really eliminate it from Switzerland. I switch now the presentation to this animation. I hope it works. Can you see the animation?
Yes, it's not starting yet.
Yeah.
Yes, start.
So you see, rabies came from Germany in the early 60s and distributed in eastern Switzerland. This is Germany here. Every red dot is a rabid fox or other animal, but mostly foxes. And these are the Swiss Alps. You see, this is a mountain range. And you see it goes mostly along the valleys and not over the mountains. And then it exploded. This is the lowlands, and it moved westwards towards the French border. And then it came into the mountains. And the first successful vaccination was preventing the rabies coming in that area. This is actually the area where I was brought up. And you see from there, they vaccinated all the entries of the mountain valleys. So they used the barrier of the mountains to remove the rabies from the mountains into the lowlands. You see here the lowlands. And it took quite some time. And there were incursions from France coming in again, even in Geneva, from France and also from Germany. These were incursions from Germany. And by 1998, you see another incursion from France, another incursion from Germany. And by 1996, Switzerland was rabies free. So this was a systematic oral bait vaccination campaign to eliminate rabies in Switzerland. If you are interested, I can make available this animation. But let us go back to the presentation. You see again the presentation.
Yes.
And I mentioned to you that they also put in a tetracycline capsule in the vaccine, and they used it to control the vaccination coverage. So they were shooting foxes, and when the foxes, and then from the fox they took teeth and they grinded the teeth, and they could see if there was ultraviolet radiation from the grinded tooth from the tetracycline, because tetracycline builds into the teeth. So this was a way to follow the vaccination coverage. But let us now look away from Switzerland to Europe. This was the situation in 1990. And in 1990, Switzerland was just about to, in the end stage of elimination campaign, you see there were only cases at the western border to France and to Germany. And you see that for all northeastern France and Germany were packed with rabies. And so were the whole Balkans and the Poland, Hungary, Czech Republic, they were packed with rabies. Also Belarus, Ukraine and Russia. Amazing, amazing numbers. And by 1999, Western Europe was already almost clear. There was still in Slovakia, Czech Republic, Slovakia, in former Yugoslavia, Poland, the Baltic states. But by 2005, even the Eastern Bloc was almost free of rabies. And by 2009, it was just remaining in the former Yugoslavia. But the whole European Union was almost free. I'm very sorry that Iraq is not on this, but if we go back quickly, you see that Turkey had a lot of rabies in the 1990s, and it also controlled it quite well. But there were still at the Syrian border cases and sporadic cases all over the countries by 2009. Today in 2020, I don't have the map of 2020, but this is almost up to the Ukrainian border and Belarus border. There is no more rabies. So how was this possible? This was possible because the almost how should I say, small-scale production of rabies bait vaccine by the Swiss was industrialized. So industrial baits were produced that were included the vaccine. And there were systematic flights over all of Eastern Europe that released, I think, 1 bait per square kilometer or so. And in this way, in this systematic way of aerial oral bait vaccination, rabies could be eliminated. I would argue that this should be in the reach of Iraq's financial possibilities to do that. So let us now summarize this elimination campaign of wildlife rabies in Europe. So first of all, the most important thing is to know the ecology of the host animals. So your point, Professor Antoine, about what is the actual resource, the actual reservoir animal, is it dogs or is it foxes, is very important. And we should elucidate that. Then it is very important that you have near real-time surveillance, which means that every case that you have, that you can really diagnose it with immunofluorescence. Today we would then also sequence such strains. If you sequence these strains, and I will show you examples, then you know also the lineage of the virus. And if you know the lineage, you know the host animal. This is all very well known. We know which lineages are carried by wildlife and which lineages are carried by dogs. And then, of course, you need a targeted vaccination strategy. The Swiss strategy was very, very carefully targeted to those areas where the outbreak wanted to be stopped. So it was not a blanket distribution. It was really focused on those places where you wanted to stop transmission. And also the strategic use of a geographical barrier. If you have sea or mountains, you can vaccinate away from the sea or away from the mountains or away from the desert. And in this way, there is no reintroduction behind your back. I will discuss this when we discuss the all of Africa elimination strategy. And then what is very important is post-elimination surveillance, that you keep the alertness that if rabies is coming back, and we will discuss this in Africa, that you are able to react. And altogether, and we know this also from Latin America, rabies can only be controlled by regional cooperation. So Iraq should cooperate with Iran and other neighboring countries on rabies elimination, because if you eliminate it in Iraq and it comes back from another country, it doesn't help you anyway. So regional coordination, international coordination is very important. So I will explain you now two larger projects that we were running in the last 5 years. One was funded by the Global Vaccine Alliance, Gavi, on estimating the burden of rabies in Central and West African countries. We did this in Chad, Mali, and Côte d'Ivoire. And here you see the logos of all the African partner veterinary laboratories and public health authorities. So we worked in Chad, we worked in N'Djamena, Mundu, and Abéché. In Mali, we worked in Bamako and Sikasso. And in Côte d'Ivoire, we worked in Bouaké and San Pedro. And in Liberia, we worked in Monrovia. So essentially, we followed in the rabies bite centers the incidence of suspected bites. This is the yellow bar. And of this, no, actually, this is at the household level. At the household level, people are bitten by, most often by their own dogs. And some of these people, they seek help. They go into the health center, and some of these bites are suspected again. But only a proportion of these suspected bites, the yellow bar, are indeed diagnosed in the animal diagnostic laboratory. So we followed a sequence of bite exposures, health center suspicions, and animal diagnostic laboratory confirmations. And in this way, we were able to backward extrapolate the true incidence of true rabies confirmed exposures. What was interesting is that, and this is still a problem, that doctors and veterinarians don't talk together. It often happens that doctors don't ask about the biting animals. They just vaccinate, but they don't ask what happens to the biting animals. Is it dead? Is it alive? Can we put it in quarantine, or can we diagnose it? The picture that I show you here is from Sikasso area in southern Mali. This is the chief veterinarian of that area, and this is the chief public health administrator. And during my visit, it was the first time that these two people met. And this shows you one of the big One Health problems, that the authorities don't talk to each other. Many, many problems could easily be solved if the authorities would just talk to each other. The other picture is anecdotic because it shows a young Malian scientist and an elderly Malian scientist. Actually, this is Mr. Rabies of Mali. He's the chief of the veterinary rabies diagnostic laboratory, Dr. Abdallah Traoré. And he used to do everything on paper, but this young man is using now a tablet to do the data collection. So you see also here we go into the digitalization of field research data collection. But in summary, I can show you here the incidence of truly rabies exposed people in Côte d'Ivoire. It's 1.5 in 1,000 people, which means 150 per 100,000 people. It is 0.8 in Mali per 1,000 people, so 80 per 100,000 people. And it is 8 per 1,000 people in Chad, a very high incidence in Chad. So 800 per 100,000 people. This is very high. And so this data is important for Gavi to estimate the needs of rabies post-exposure prophylaxis to reach the target of 0 human rabies by 2030. And this picture shows you the first fluorescence microscope that we installed in the Liberian Central Veterinary Laboratory. So with this project, we could establish for the first time immunofluorescence in Liberia. So I was also part of the WHO Rabies Modeling Consortium, who used the data that we have produced and other data, of course, to calculate the need of post-exposure prophylaxis for Gavi eligible countries. And in summary, we would expect 1 million deaths between 2020 and 2035. And we estimate that free access to PEP would probably be able to prevent half of these deaths. And if we can switch to the new intradermal regime of 3 doses only, then the vaccine demand would not increase because we can save a lot of the vaccine because we only need 0.1 ml per injection and not 1 full ml per injection. And the investment would be about $635 per death averted, which is higher than childhood vaccinations, but otherwise it is not very high. So this is the conclusion of this modeling study. And you see here that if we do nothing, we have this ongoing transmission of rabies worldwide, which is slowly increasing. If we provide to everybody post-exposure vaccination, we can prevent almost half of the death. But we can do no more because post-exposure prophylaxis is not active at the level of the dog. It is only active at the level of the human. But if we would be able to implement dog mass vaccination, then we could eliminate rabies properly and we can really go to 0 human death. So what is important is that we compare the provision of post-exposure prophylaxis alone against post-exposure prophylaxis plus dog mass vaccination. And this, I think I explained it already. We did it in Jamena with the mass vaccination of 20,000 dogs in 2 mass vaccination campaigns. But currently we have another project where we want to make sure that we can fully use the potential of post-exposure prophylaxis. This project is funded by the European Development Country Clinical Trial Partnership, EDCTP, with the same partners that were in the Gavi study. And it is called Block Rabies, because we want to go for electronic patient registration and blockchain security. So the motivation of the project is that even if vaccine is in the country, not all the people have access. We have outdated post-exposure schemes and there is inadequate supply chains. Countries like Mali's often, or Chad, often there is no vaccine in the country. And there is a lack of communication between human and animal health. This man died because he was bitten by his own pup. And he went to the health center. The nurse only injected tetanus toxoid and not rabies vaccination. So the man eventually died. So it's also a lack of knowledge in the health system that is at the origin. So we ask ourselves if we can secure the patient registration with an electronic application, and if we can link the health center with the veterinary laboratory with a digital application and also with the vaccine supply chain, we hope that we can massively increase the coverage of post-exposure prophylaxis. Here you see a provisional integrated application flowchart that brings together electronic patient recording, post-exposure prophylaxis, vaccine supply chain, and dog quarantine and diagnosis. Today, there exists no digital application that covers all these aspects. We looked at several existing open access electronic patient recording system. We looked at SORMAS, this surveillance, the German surveillance response system, and others, but we didn't find any application that brought everything together. So we are programming this with a software engineer, and we want to go from this situation on the left side. You see all the paper records of people that are bitten by dogs towards a server-based and decentralized recording of electronic patient registers. This is the edge of our research, and we have just started we have just launched this project in beginning of December in Abidjan in Côte d'Ivoire. This is the server room of the National Hygiene Institute in Côte d'Ivoire. So I discussed with you sequencing of strains, and we argue that this is very important because if you can actually sequence the full virus, or at least part of it, you can classify it in lineages. So we have, for example, Eurasian lineages. We have Africa 1, 3, and 2. Africa 3 is typically a wildlife strain, but most of our strains that we have isolated are Africa 2. And if you know the lineage of your virus, you know most of the time which is the prevailing reservoir species. And if this is not done for Iraq, we are really willing to collaborate to establish the prevailing lineage circulating in Iraq. Another important point is that most of this work that I show you here is only sequencing of the N protein, the nucleoprotein, and not of the whole genome. But today it doesn't cost you much more to sequence the whole genome instead of only part of it. So I showed you, I think, part of this. This is about the mass vaccination of the dogs. I think you have seen this. I recall you also the importance of the social process. You have to motivate the communities to participate in the mass vaccination. So these are all the chiefs of the city quarters that are brought together to organize their communities so that we can eventually mass vaccinate the dogs. I have shown you this, and this is just to repeat that mass vaccination of dogs definitely works to interrupt transmission of rabies. And to those of you who are hesitant if they want to get vaccinated against COVID, I clearly tell you, yes, it makes sense. If enough people get vaccinated against COVID, we can get rid of it. That is for sure. And one important result here is that we could free the city of N'Djamena from rabies, and these are all the strains that were collected before the elimination, the blue ones. But as you see here, after 1 year, rabies came back, and the red strains here are those that are newly recorded, and they are genetically distinct from those that were eliminated. So this brings us to the strong conclusion, which is supported also by the mathematical models that we did, that rabies came back from the outside. And we will discuss that further. And you see also that after the mass vaccination started, the use of PEP, post-exposure prophylaxis, declined, but it did not go to zero. So people still kept being treated, although there was no rabies anymore present. And this is also a sign of the lack of communication between public health and animal health. And I showed you this slide already. I will just repeat it again. If you do only post-exposure prophylaxis, you have this increasing curve. But if you mass vaccinate dogs, you have higher cost at the beginning, but after 6 years, you interrupt transmission, and the cumulative cost drop below, strongly below the use of post-exposure prophylaxis alone. So to any government, we can say, don't restrict only treating humans, really invest in effective mass vaccination of the reservoir host, be it foxes or dogs, because after a certain time, if you are able to interrupt transmission and the disease is not reintroduced, you can, it is much less costly. So it is of national economic interest to mass vaccinate the reservoir. So again, I insist very much that you understand the ecology of the disease. In Chad, clearly not the monkeys and not the cats are the reservoirs. It's clearly the dogs who are the reservoirs. But we still vaccinated also the other animals that were brought to the mass vaccination to keep the people participating. Now, we did also a trial with contact sensors. These were a collar that had a contact sensor with Bluetooth. And with that, we could establish the contact network of all these 300 dogs in this city area. And I spoke to you about natural barriers of transmission. But what you see in this example is a man-made barrier. You see here, the contact network is almost interrupted, and that corresponds to this highway. Here is a highway. This is a very busy road, and most of the dogs that cross that highway are killed. So this is a man-made barrier that prevents contacts between dogs. Another important point is that dogs, they don't move for kilometers and kilometers. They are very local. A dog's home range is not more than a square kilometer. A dog rarely moves more than 500 meters around his home. Eventually, when they are in heat, they would move a bit further, but in a normal condition, a dog is very, very localized. So our question, let me quickly jump to that reasoning. So that brings us to the current project formulation. So you see here the city of N'Djamena. So we made it free of rabies. And we argue rabies, if rabies is coming into N'Djamena from the outside, it is most often coming in by human-mediated dog transport. A dog will not walk 10 kilometers into the city. It is humans that carry dogs with their cars that bring latent dogs. So here we were driving around N'Djamena. You see, this is from the car. We were driving around N'Djamena, and we put a V on all the places where we want to put a vaccination post. So we want to establish a 24-hour, 1 year full permanence of vaccinating every dog that comes into town. And we want to see if by only vaccinating dogs that come into town, we can interrupt transmission. This is the current hypothesis that we have, because the chains of transmission in town are too short to sustain transmission on its own. It needs continuous latent dogs coming into town to maintain transmission. So this is the current research where we are. Let me quickly go back to the contact network analysis. This paper is also made available to you by Sarhad if you want it. And it shows also that the reproductive number of rabies is only about 1.2. So basic reproductive number of 1.2 would need only about a 20 to 30% vaccination coverage to interrupt transmission. But effectively, this is only happening if all the dogs would be randomly distributed. But dogs are not random. Dogs are interconnected by these kind of contact networks. And the contact network analysis, interestingly, if you look at this slide on the right side, confirms the 70% coverage of dogs to interrupt transmission. And this is because of the heterogeneity of the contact network. And I find this very interesting because if you read the recommendations of WHO says you must mass vaccinate 70% of the dogs to interrupt transmission. Let me continue. So for a country like Chad, there are very important political and legal conditions to really go to elimination. First of all, you need the political will. If there is no political will, you can do nothing. And you can also work on the legal provisions. Chad has not revised its legal provisions since 1961, as old as I am. I'm 60 years this year. And so a legal revision, I think in Iraq, if you would make dog mass vaccination compulsory, dog private vaccination compulsory, maybe you could eliminate rabies just like that, because I would argue that in Iraq, people are probably willing to vaccinate their dog against rabies. In Jamena, this is not the case because people are too poor. They cannot afford the cost of vaccinating their dog. And in our case, the Chadian state contributed to the mass vaccination. They provided the personnel and the logistics. We only came in with the vaccine. And it needs an intersectoral approach. The doctors and veterinarians must talk to each other and plan mass vaccination campaigns together. So you need the public and animal health authorities, you need education, you need the media, you need the city administration, and you need the Ministry of Interior. All these people must work together. Then you have technical and social conditions. So you must have a surveillance laboratory in all areas. In West Africa, most of the time, rabies surveillance is only taking place in the capital city. Only the capital cities have an immunofluorescence microscope. But you must have a fluorescence diagnostic capacity in every region, in every province, to be sure that you can do the surveillance properly. Or you have a very good transport system, then you can do it in a centralized way. But Iraq is much bigger than Switzerland. And you must understand the social dynamics of rabies control. And let me just come back also to diagnostic testing. today we speak a lot about the rapid test for COVID. This is the rapid test for rabies. And this is not a serological test. This is not looking at antibodies. It looks at antigen. So it can measure antigen in the brain of a dog. This is from South Korea. This publication is also, this is open access. And then when we repeated the mass vaccination of dogs in Bamako, in Mali, we were unsuccessful because we could only reach 25% coverage. And we developed this effectiveness model that looks at all the factors that influence successful mass vaccination. It's the vaccine efficacy. Okay, this is decided by the pharmaceutical industry. But all these aspects here, they are social. They depend on the social dynamic. This is about availability, accessibility, affordability, adequacy, and acceptability. And then, of course, the provider compliance if the community really participates. In the Malian case, the information was very poor. So this is another paper that I made available, how to assess vaccination programs. And here we can show that the people did not have enough information. Let me just go back here. People had not enough information, and this is why the coverage at the end was only 25%. Because all these factors are cumulative. You see here the mathematical formula of the factors. This is the multiplicative sign. And these factors are all multiplicative. And each of these factors must be reasonably high to achieve sufficient vaccination coverage at the time. So if you multiply all the black bars here, you get this declining gray bar level. I recommend you to look at the paper to understand it properly. So we argue that we have to use a participatory approach, as I showed you with all these quarter chiefs, to discuss with them how a campaign can be best organized. Then you can do a mass vaccination campaign, and then you do a quantitative and a qualitative effectiveness analysis. You measure the vaccination coverage, but you inquire also with the communities the reasons why they did not participate in the campaign. And then you can analyze this and improve the mass vaccination design and go into the next round to improve coverage. To end my talk, we talk about cost, and a country like Chad would not have enough money at the outset to finance a national campaign. A national campaign in Chad would cost about $40 million. And $40 million can be a lot of money, but it's generally not so much money. But what the idea that we put forward in this paper is that a private investor could make available $40 million. Then you would have a national rabies elimination authorities that would do the effective campaign, and an outcome funder. This can be a development agency. It could also be World Bank or another funder, would refund the investor based on the result of the effective campaign. If enough dogs are vaccinated, the outcome funder would refund the investor with a little interest. And this is called development impact funding. This comes from the social policy of Tony Blair in the UK. And it started with so-called social impact bonds. And we apply this theory here to development impact bonds. So far, unfortunately, no animal disease program has been funded yet, but there is one that is close to funding about sleeping sickness elimination in Uganda.
Can you repeat this, please? This slide.
The development impact bond.
Yes, please.
Up to now, no animal disease program has been funded in this way, but there is one program that has been that is close to funding. That is sleeping sickness elimination in Uganda. Yeah. But this would potentially be an opportunity for Iraq to attempt a development impact bond. Yeah. Now, I recall you that there is international engagement. There is the Global Alliance for Rabies Control, GARC, but there is also the PARACON, the Pan-African Network of Rabies Control. And I would also like to remind you that the most successful animal disease control program in Africa was the Rinderpest campaign. The Pan-African Rinderpest campaign was funded by the European Union, and it was done in partnership between the African countries and Europe. And it was successful in eliminating rabies, Rinderpest. And I don't see a reason why this successful program of Rinderpest elimination could not be extended to other diseases and also to other places in the world. So here you see the so-called stepwise approach to rabies elimination. And here for every country, you see the stage where the countries are in. And unfortunately, almost no country has really a national rabies elimination plan. But this is from 2014, so since 6 years, many countries have made some progress. But you can read this and you can also see where Iraq is. It starts with no information, then it starts about establishing epidemiology, then it continues with developing a national rabies strategy, and then the full-scale implementation of a national control strategy and the maintenance of freedom of disease. So you can tell me after in which stage Iraq is in rabies elimination. And here you see also a cost estimate for West and Central Africa. We estimate about 1 billion euro, 1,000 million euro to eliminate rabies in West and Central Africa. But this estimate is also already some times ago. And here it is about the possible strategy of rabies elimination. And I recall you what I said about Europe. In Europe, we used natural barriers, and Africa has very interesting natural barriers. Of course, it has the ocean. You have the ocean and you have the Sahara Desert. And one option would be to start in Mauritania, because in Mauritania you have the Sahara Desert and you have the ocean. And if you vaccinate towards the east, rabies will not come back from the sea. It will not come back from the Sahara. So this would be a strategy to move eastwards to Mali, Senegal, Guinea, Cote d'Ivoire, and so on, the coastal countries, to move it towards the east. In the same time, we could vaccinate from the desert to the coast in the Maghreb countries, in Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, and Libya. In Egypt, we could move from the sea towards the south to Sudan, and from South Africa we could also move northward towards Central Africa, towards Congo. So this would be a strategy how rabies could be eliminated by regional coordination over the whole continent. So this is a list of all the partners with whom we did all this work I presented to you. So you see that international partnership is very, very important, but also partnership between public and animal health. Thank you very much. Shukran jazilan.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jacob. And now, as usual, I will open the floor for discussions. And also, after discussion, we will have 1 hour discussion in Arabic.
Yes.
Yeah. And feel free to stay there also.
Shukran.
So please, if you have any question or comment, just raise your hand and I will open the microphone for you. Yes, okay. Dr. Antoine. Yeah, feel free to open the mic.
Thank you, Dr. Jacob, for the very interesting lecture you gave us, or speech. Actually, I am asking about Dr. Majda Saeed Abdullah موجودة is here.
دكتورة ماجدة إذا موجودة رفع الإيد حتى أقدر أفتح لك المايك.
موجودة؟
ما أعتقد وأنا راح أبحث عنها إذا موجودة بالattendance list.
Because Dr. Majda, after I left the country in 2012, she built up a good laboratory for diagnosis of rabies. And she made actually this immunofluorescent antibody test for diagnosis. And she did a lot of surveys about rabies. Mainly, I think I remember what she was saying once about the dogs are the main reservoir in Iraq of rabies. For this reason, means Dr. Majda, if she speaks, she knows a lot about. In the public health, there was also a vet working in a lab, Pastoral Institute. Also, he was using Negri bodies, which is the old one, for diagnosis. And then he also get trained on immunofluorescence for diagnosis in human beings. Actually, really, I don't know about Iraq. People which own dogs in their houses, they have to vaccinate or they vaccinate their dogs. But only our problem in Iraq, I remember, is the street dogs. Is the stray dogs are there, you cannot control them. So you can use the baits, as you said, to control. And the baits contain the vaccine, as you said. What type of vaccine, this question, used for the baits? It is the recombinant vaccinia virus, recombinant vaccine which contain the gene. As I remember, I was in Austria, near your country, near Switzerland in the 70s. And I was trained in Hitzendorf lab about the immunofluorescence. And the people, the hunters of foxes, they brings for us the head of the dog. And we use 2 methods for diagnosis. And that one, inoculating mice, intracerebral, and immunofluorescence. I got really problem with that. One condition was positive with the assistant, and we get the vaccine afterwards. Problem was. And really, also they use these baits for vaccination of the wild animals. And as you said, also they use the chicken head or chicken from the helicopter. They throw these heads of chicken with the vaccine. So in the United States, as I am living now here, they use this Bates vaccine. Main problem in New York, is the raccoons, or the reservoir for the rabies. Can we conduct that bait vaccine for the street dogs or the stray dogs in Iraq? Because mainly the one way we were using before, I remember shooting the dog with a bullet. The police shoot the dog, kill the dog completely, and this is not allowed in your country, or using toxin, toxic material like strychnine, poison, to kill the dogs, to control. And wasn't successful, wasn't not successful at all. For this reason, I think the bait type of vaccine is the best way to control in Iraq. Thank you, Dr. Jacob. This is the main thing which I want.
Thank you, Dr. Anton. Can I respond?
Yes, please.
Sure. Yes.
Thank you very much for your information, and this is very, very interesting to see your experience. Actually, when we started vaccinating the dogs in Jamena, actually all the people also said, but these are all stray dogs. And then we mass vaccinated the dogs and we collared them. And then we went back through the street and we counted all the dogs. And we counted the proportion of dogs with a collar. And this allowed us to estimate the vaccination coverage. And with a statistical model, we could also estimate the ownerless dogs, the inaccessible dogs. This is published. I don't go into the details, but it is possible. And we could show that only about 15% of the dogs were really inaccessible to vaccination. Only 15% of the dogs are stray dogs. And this would be my question to you. Could we repeat this kind of exercise to find out what is the proportion of really inaccessible dogs in Iraq? Is it 50%? Is it 20%? Or is it only 10%? If it is only 10%, if we vaccinate all the owned dogs, then we can still interrupt transmission. But if you have 50% of stray dogs, then it is difficult. And this situation, we have it in India. But in India, the dogs are fed with chapati in the streets because the Hindu think that the dog can be your ancestor, or you can become an animal, or an animal can become a human. But this is not a Muslim belief. In Islam, the dog is impure. So I would argue that probably the proportion of really stray dogs is maybe not as high as in India. But this,
I think, doctor, is more than 50%.
you
And
think so?
I think other people will respond to you. But I think more, the dogs, stray dogs, is more than 60, 70%.
Okay.
This is from all observation I have.
Yeah, my recommendation is really to ascertain the dog ecology. I mean, to really establish the proportion of ownerless dogs to be sure which type of vaccine to use. Now we have the next problem. The next problem is that oral bait vaccination works very well in foxes and raccoons, but it doesn't work very well in the dog. And we don't know exactly why, but one reason could be that the fox is chewing very well the bait. So the time of interaction with the pharyngeal immune system is sufficient to elicit an immune response. While the dog, if he takes a bite, he just swallows. He doesn't chew, so the vaccine is destroyed in the stomach and doesn't elicit a vaccination immunization response. But we don't know this exactly, but it is well understood that oral bait vaccination is not working very well in dogs. Yeah.
If you change the baits, maybe, if you change the bait, the type of bait, in which bait the dog likes.
Yeah.
Means it could be fish. No, I don't think so. Fish bait, or it could be
Yeah.
beef.
Yeah, but it needs operational research in Iraq. You have to test it on the Iraqi dogs, otherwise you don't know. Yeah.
Okay. So the type of vaccine in the bait is the recombinant vaccinia virus.
I don't remember which was the vaccine type in the Swiss elimination campaign. We are using the we are using Rabizine from Merieux.
Rabizine.
Yeah.
I remember Rabizine.
Rabizine. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because the raccoon, they use this vaccinia, I think.
Yeah.
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 Thank you, Dr. Antoine. If please, if you have any question or comment, please raise your hand. Use the raise hand option on the Zoom. Yes, Dr. Muhammad Ismail. Feel free to open the mic.
Can I talk?
Please.
نعم أسمعك.
من فضلك.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Jacob, and thank you, Dr. Anton. You mentioned, Dr. Jacob, there is no information about Iraq. But if you go to GARC, you will see some information that I submitted on my lecture on April 2018 in Annecy, in the north of France, on the conference of MIRIP 4.
Good.
Yes, I put it some information about this, and I got a workshop in Amol City in the north of Iran by the Mirio Foundation with Dr. Jean-Pierre from Swiss and Dr. Bori from France and some colleagues. And we take how to use the rabbit test that you show for us
yes.
in your lecture.
Yes.
How to use it. This is a screening test used in the field. They use they take the brain and they make a suspension from it,
yes.
and put it in this like the pregnancy test.
Exactly.
And the new COVID test.
Yes.
So you can go to GARC and see my name and my information on this about Iraq, and you can use it for you.
Yeah, very good.
Thank you very much for all.
Could you please, Dr. Muhammad, send the paper for me, and I will send it to Dr. Jacob?
I hope to find it, because I'm retired. I was a representative for Ministry of Health in this conference.
I see.
Good.
And about the Dr. Majda and Dr. Mashair, also they submit some information about the virus, the strain in Iraq. So you can use it also.
Yeah, this kind of workshop, that it's good that you share this information with us. So sometimes you have presented the paper or the work in global conferences, but still even the researcher from Iraq don't know about it. So I was wondering if we have any data about the rabies in human or in animal, because for me, I didn't know, I couldn't find any. So it's an opportunity in here. So we know about such research that being done in Iraq.
I make it with a cooperation with the Pasteur Institute in Medical Center, and with the CDC, the Ministry of Health.
Nice. Dr. Jacob, there is a question in the chat saying, do animals happen to be a carrier that are not affected or in a non-clinical condition?
Okay, what we know is that in an exposed dog, only half of the exposed dog really become rabid. And in humans, it is even less. In humans, it is only 16% of exposed people who really get rabid. You know, there is a lot of abortive infection. I mean, the virus comes in the body, but it is phagocytized, or it is destroyed, or it doesn't reach the nerve, and so on. And so interestingly, in dogs, we consider that only 50% of the dogs really get rabid. And we consider this also in our mathematical models. And I would presume that this proportion is probably comparable in other animals, but I only know it from dogs.
Yep. Thank you. Is there any more questions or comments? So there's a question saying, do dogs remain carrier? I don't think so.
No, there is no carrier state in rabies. If a dog gets rabid, he dies invariably after 10 days at the longest. And you like in other diseases where you can carry the bacteria without being ill, this is not the case in rabies. No. But what we have is the latency. I mean, you can be bitten by a dog, and then it takes up to 3 months until you become rabid, because the virus takes 3 months until it reaches the brain. That is possible, yeah. But not a chronic carrier stage as such, yeah.
But bats are carrier.
Bats are carriers, indeed. You're right, yeah.
Human to human, doctor, I'm sorry to interrupt. Human to human, there is 3 cases in the United States. They say could be from human to human transmission.
Yeah.
But sometimes they say no, and this.
There is a episode of cornea transplantation.
That's right.
Yeah, but I don't know of others. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Cornell graduate.
Oh, okay.
Cornell University graduate.
Yes.
It is unfortunately Dr. Majda is not here. She has a lot of results, I think, with Dr. Mohammed Ismail. He gave some results. But Dr. Majda, she's working on rabies, actually. I didn't work on, I worked on rinderpest and foot and mouth and all the diseases before now.
Yeah.
So unfortunately.
Yeah. So the form for the participation in the lecture, you can use the code or the link in the chat. And please raise your hand if you have any question. Dr. Talib Kadam. Unmute and is there any questions? Dr. Maulud, are you in the meeting? So if you are available, please raise your hand. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I see there is no questions. Thank you, Dr. Jacob, for this lecture, and I hope that we will have another lecture from you soon in the future. We're still not deciding about the title, but we will discuss about it later. We appreciate your help.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have
Thank
a nice
you.
evening. Ma salama.
مع السلامة.
السلام.
دكتور طالب إذا أقدر آسف دكتور طالب مفتوح المايك. دكتور طالب تقدر تفتح المايك؟ Okay. So for now, I will have the, unfortunately, دكتور مولود لحد الآن ما موجود. طبعا راح نستمر باللغة العربية حاليا لأن أغلب الحضور من العراق والدكتور جاكوب left the meeting. فنستمر باللغة العربية، نستغل وجود دكتور أنطوان ويانا في حالة عنده أي كومنت أو معلومات يحب يشاركها معنا. راح أشير فيديو صغير شوية الحالة السريرية. نحاول نشوفه. طبعا الفيديو راح نص الصوت مالته. دكتور أنطوان إذا حبيت تعلق feel free. إذا حبيت فقط إنه تشرح لنا معلومات، إذا شيء حبيت تضيفه أثناء ما الفيديو ينعرض. الفيديو تقريبا 5 دقائق بحالات ريبيز الحيوانات مختلفة، مجرد نشوف الحالة كلينيكالي، و يعني براحتك إذا حبيت تحكي عن الموضوع، إذا حبيت تحكي عن الحالة نفسها أو إذا حبيت تحكي عن موضوع له علاقة به. أوكي إن شاء الله خير.
حقيقة هاي البقرة مبينة. أتذكر جتينا حالة الكلية بقرة نيرفس ونفس الحالة بالضبط اللي تشوفوها. هذا الصياح مالتها النعير وهاجم dangerous.
ضار كلب بزون الواحد بزون صعد على المحصار اللي تفرورها.
I want to help you, okay, bud?
وكانت هذا السكانك كاري طبعا يصاب بالسكانك في امريكا ايضا. هذا الحيوان
Same thing. Bud.
هذا الحيوان اللي ريحته كلش ما طيبه يكرهوه.
سكانكو أيضا الراكون أيضا ينصاب
راكون والسكانك الراكون والكايوتي أيضا. الكايوتي يسموه هنا بأمريكا. الكايوتي خطر جدا.
That's not a good spot.
وحسب المنطقة اللي مال الولاية
اللي ما
فيها اللي ريزيرفور مختلف.
الكاتس هاي معروفة. ذكر كنا طلاب صف خامس وجتينا كات، كان بروفيسور شاهي يدرسنا ميديسن. جتينا كات وكلنا الطلاب بعدين قال لنا يبيها ريبيز، وكلتنا رحنا معهد باستور اخذنا اللقاح 10 ضربات تحت بالبطن. كان نحن عددنا 21 طالب.
That's what he was doing before, Matt.
Yeah, now he's gonna like double almost with it backwards.
نانا فوكس.
I got all the DNR.
هذا الفوكس.
Call me back.
هذه نيرفس ساينس.
Shoulders also, but yeah, who? So, yeah, that's Rab. See, if it wasn't so damn close to those cars,
Yeah.
now he'll start going in circles again. But he's having the seizures. What's going on?
Yeah. Yeah.
He came right at me a little while ago, Matt. I mean, see, if you look,
Look at him licking.
well, it's not that; it's his tongue.
I know.
And he's peeing everywhere too. You can smell that too.
يعني الحالات العصبية.
Is that like hallucinating or what is it? What's that?
احنا عندنا في امريكا عندنا السكويرل مثل هذا فارة التمر. سكويرل حيوان ينقل ريبيز. وكان الحقيقة بالعمارة اللي نسكن بيها اكو ناس ينطوهم اكل، هم يصعدون على الجار بيوتهم فينطوهم اكل. صار بعدين تعميم عندنا ما حد ينطي اكل للسكانكس. فتعميم بعد ما حد يذب لهم اكل خبز او اي شيء حتى لا يجون يدخلون للعماره، لما يشوفون دائما ينطون ممكن اذا فتح الباب يطبون السكانكس بني السكورلز
سناجب.
سناجب بالضبط سكورل. هاي بالموصل نسميها فارة التمر تصعد على النخلة وما.
Yeah, you fucking foaming at the mouth.
Hey, what's wrong?
والتشيبمانكس أيضا حيوان هذا اللي ياكل البندق.
I know you're hungry. You not hungry?
This supposedly is a cat
He's growling. He's dying.
fairly nice, fairly normal.
Somebody poisoned him. This is what happens when people poison.
كان قبل بالعراق أتذكر يعني رأس الكلب يؤخذ إلى البيطرة مستشفى البيطري يوضع 10 أيام. إذا ريبيز يموت مثل ما قال دكتور جاكوب يموت بالريبيز. إذا كاتس إذا دوغز فتموت حتى الأبقار تموت. كانوا ياخذون البيطرة وعندهم أتذكر بين المستشفى كانت بالشيخ عمر سابقا بعدين صارت بساحة عدن عندهم أقفاص خاصة. ما أدري أنتم شفتوا أنا كنت أشوفها يعني من مات ب10 أيام يعني هذا ريبيز. دكتورة ماجدة كانت شوفتني سلايدات كلش حلوة تشتغل على الفلورسن انتي بودي.
حاولنا نرسل لهم
والله
الميتنج ارسلناه لهم لكن ميبي يعني عندهم شغل او شيء.
والله المفروض تحضر انا كان لواي كان دقيت عليها. هذه النيجري بوديز اللي واضحة. هذه كانوا يشخصون قائمة النيجري بوديز. العالم نيجري هو اعتقد ايطالي اللي اكتشف النيجري بوديز. هاي هيماتوكسين ايوسين ويشوفون بالسيتوبلازم يشوفون الانكلوجن بوديز.
هو هسه حاليا الستاندرد تيست الفلورسنت انتي بودي.
فلورسنت انتي بودي هو والبي سي ار. حاليا البي سي ار هذا حكى عليه اللي هو يسوون لينج للجين خاص.
بالشو اسمه بامريكا من كنا من بعد النكروبسي انه ناخذ العينه من الميد برين ناخذها مجرد يعني الحيوان اذا سسبكتد ريبيز بعد احنا من فتحه بس يجي الباثولوجيست واحد من عندنا ياخذ العينه من الميد برين
من الهايبوثالاموس
للمختبر.
هي راسا امبريشن. هاي بالنمسا كان عندنا ستيك الحقيقه صغيره شلون ما تخليها تفحص البلاعيم لوزتين يعني ستيك اون ذا برين يفتحها شويه ناخذ امبريشن سمير نسوي امبريشن سمير وبعدين نثبت الامبريشن بالاسيتون اتذكر ونفحص بالاميونوفلوريسنس يعني immunoglobulin conjugated دايركت او اندايركت طريقتين تستعمل.
في حاله اذا كان انه اللي يفتح الحيوان مو باثولوجيست ننصحه انه فقط يقطع الراس من هذه المنطقه اللي اتلانتو اوكتيبيكال ريجن.
نعم.
يصير اكسبوز للميد برين ويستخدم هاي السوابه او السباتشولا ياخذ جزء من يدخل عن طريق هذا الثقب اللي بالفقرات. نعم. وياخذ جزء من الميد برين ويرسل للمختبر المركزي حتى لا يفتح الدماغ ويصير اكسبوجر للفيروس. فنحاول انه اقل اكسبوجر موجود ففقط نعم. يقطع الراس وياخذ جزء من عينه من الميد برين بواسطه السباتشولا ويرسل للمختبر المركزي. طبعا هذا كان ما متوفر الاختبار هو بسيط جدا، مجرد يعني يعملون امبريشن لهذه القطع اللي هي من البرين، خلوها امبريشن على السلايد، وتستمر البروسيجر اللي هي تثبيت بالاسيتون ولحد ما يسوي ستينينج بالانتي بودي، ومن يفحصوها. هاي الصورة هسه مختلفة شوية، هاي مهمة توكسين ديوسين اللي نشوف بها الانكلوجن بودي انتراسيتوبلازميك، انكلوجن بودي نسميه نيجرو بودي بالنيورون. لكن بالاميونوفلوريسنت راح تطلع لنا مثل هاي الصورة، مثل الجالكسي اللي هي هاي كل هي فلوريسنت انتي بودي اللي يدل على انه هذا الحيوان مصاب بالريبيز.
نعم. وهي يعني طريقة اللي لحد الآن تجرى، يعني الاميون فلوريسنت انتي بودي بالامبريشن سمير. وكنا في هيدسندورف في النمسا، هاي قديم 1970، يعني رحت إفادة أخذت الدبلوم كان بالفيروسز بوقتها. فيعني كنا ناخذ جزء ونصحنه ونحقن انتراسيربرالي بالبرين، يعني بالمايس، ساكلينج مايس نحقنه ونراقبه يوميا. إذا يصير بيه شلل، يدي الشلل نقطع راسه وناخذ أيضا امبريشن سمير منه من الدماغ من المايس، ونعمل ايمونوفلوريسنس نتأكد منه، أو نسوي هيماتوكسين أو يعني ايوسين ستينينج ونشوف النجري بوديز. هذه بالسبعين اكيد اتطورت هسه. فبعدين انا ما بالكليه ما اشتغلت على الريبيز الحقيقه، كان عندي وهس على ذيك البقره اللي شخصناها، بس بعدين الامكانيات ما كانت متوفره، كنا نريد نحضر الكونجيجيت للريبيز.
هو شوي الامكانيات هاي اللي تلزمنا احنا حاليا، حتى نكروبسي ما نقدر نسوي بالكليه لكن مو العزل الفيروسي.
يعني كنا نعزل لهسه. مره واني وحده تكنيشن وياي ما ادري شلون هذيك الحاله الوحيده طلعت بوزيتيف، ونحن ما كنا ما ادري ما كنت لابس كافه وهي ما كانت. فاثنين مسؤول السنتر قال لنا هسه تروحون تاخذون لقاح، فاخذنا لقاح وقتها. فلازم حذر، وحذر واحد كلش من الريبيز.
بامريكا اغلب الاطباء البيطريين الباثولوجيست اللي يسوون النكروبسي اغلبيتهم ياخذون بري اكسبوجر فاكسينيشن.
بالضبط نعم.
ويسوون تيست كل سنه او كل سنتين للتايتر مال الانتي بودي، حتى يشوفون انه انت عندك تايتر كافي مال الانتي بودي از بروتكشن.
نعم، هي هاي يعني الناس اللي لازم ياخذون اللقاح هم الاطباء البيطريين بالذات، اللي يشتغلون بالمختبرات التشخيص بالذات الريبيز، ياخذون بري اكسبوجر فاكسين اللي هو ينطيهم مناعه ضد الريبيز. واعتقد يعني انيمال هاندلر ايضا في امريكا يمكن اللي تماس مباشر مع الدوجز اند كاتس. اتذكر والله واحد ايضا في كورنيل يمكن تدرس ب 75 توفى بالريبيز من بقره، ما كان فحصها وما يدري بها ريبيز، ما كانت كلش فيشس يعني، فتوفى. اتذكر في جامعتنا كان قسم الميديسن، بس بالسبعينيات سيطروا هوايه امريكا على الريبيز، بس بالراكون هسه.
بس ستيل اكو حالات هوايه تجي بامريكا ريبت كات او
الحقيقه انا عندي احصائيه دخلت بامريكا بالسنه بالوايلد انيمالز 5000 حاله كل امريكا شخص 5000.
صحيح.
بس بالبشر البشر يمكن 2 إلى 3 حاله سنويا بكل امريكا، يعني 50 ولايه 2 إلى 3 حاله يشخص.
وأنا كنت أتمنى إنه نشوف الحالات اللي موجودة بالهيومن بالعراق. هنا الدكتور محمد حكى عنها، بس ما بالتحضير المحاضرة ما لقينا الداتا بصراحة، وما كنا نعرف إنه منو اللي مشتغل هيك شيء. دكتور محمد إسماعيل، أني لا تفتح المايك. دكتور طالب، دكتور مولود المايك مفتوح.
اي نعم العفو. شكرا دكتور استاذي العزيز دكتور انطوان. حقيقه بهذه اللحظه احب ان اذكر انه دكتور انطوان هو اللي درسنا بصف الرابع المعديه درس موضوع الريبيز وامراض اخرى. فعلى اساس انه انا اتحدث عن موضوع الاعراض اللي تظهر بالحيوانات، بس المثل يقول اذا حضر الماء بطل التيمم. واستاذنا العزيز كفى ووفى في هذا الجانب. وحتى اذا اريد اتحدث عن الاعراض فهي اللي تظهر على مختلف الحيوانات، فبالتاكيد هو النهر واللي يعني اخذتها من عنده قبل ما يقارب اكثر من 40 سنه. فما اجملها من لقاء حلو وجميل انه يشرفنا استاذنا العزيز دكتور انطوان. والحقيقه والحق يقال دكتور انطوان كان له دور كبير من خلال عملي في البيطره في عده في اللقاحات وكثير من الامراض. وقبل فتره سمعته يذكر انه موضوع دكتوره ماجده. حقيقه انا وجهت من خلال علاقتي مع يعني الزملاء بالبيطره، وجهت لهم دعوات، وحتى قبل ما تبدأ المحاضره يعني ذكرتهم بانه مشاركتهم بهذه المحاضره، علما بانه بالمحاضره السابقه اذا تتذكرون دكتور ميثاق قلنا له محاضرتنا القادمه راح تكون عن الريبز ونأمل حضوركم، بس الغائب مثل ما يقول حجته معاه او ظروفه ما نعرف. الجانب اللي ذكره واللي هو اساس محور محاضراتنا مع دكتور جاكوب مشكورا اللي تفضل رغم مشاغله. هذه المحاضره الرابعه دكتور انطوان نرتبها مع دكتور جاكوب في مجال الصحه الواحده، وهو هذا الهدف الاساسي اللي احنا نسعى انه تكون كثقافه. السيطره على مرض داء الكلب او الريبز ما يكفي فقط انه الجوانب او الدوائر الصحيه. هنا نشوف جانب الثروه الحيوانيه او الحيوانات ودور الطبيب البيطري في التخلص من هذا المرض، اضافه الى موضوع البيئه والعوامل اللي تساعد على انتشار هذا المرض. هذا المرض وغيره من الامراض مثل ما ذكرنا سابقا، اذا ما يكون هناك لجنه عليا او هناك تعاون ما بين القطاعات ذات العلاقه لا يمكن السيطره على اي من الامراض بالذات المشتركه في القطر. ويتذكر دكتور استاذنا العزيز دكتور انطوان في موضوع الطاعون البقري او البروسيلا، كانت هناك وانا دائما اكررها اللجنه العليا للسيطره على الطاعون البقري، اللجنه العليا للسيطره على البروسيلا والسل، وكانت تضم عده خبراء من جهات ذات علاقه، وزاره الصحه، وزاره الزراعه، وزاره التعليم العالي، والدوائر، وزاره الداخليه وغيرها، في سبيل تطبيق الاجراءات اللي يتم اتخاذها في مجال هذه السيطره. دكتور سرهد تسمعني؟
نعم دكتور نسمعك.
الموضوع كبير، وهذه محاضراتنا هي فقط مثل نضيء او علامات مضيئه لان ناخذ دورنا كاطباء بيطريين في الجانب الوقائي، وقايه المجتمع ووقايه الانسان والبيئه، وهذا اللي نركز عليه من خلال مهنتنا ومن خلال قوانين او من خلال موضوع او المفهوم الان اللي هو سائد موضوع الصحه الواحده. شكري مره ثانيه الى دكتور جاكوب والى زميلي دكتور جليل اللي له دور حقيقه في تنظيم وابراز هذه المحاضرات من خلال عمله مع دكتور جاكوب، واستاذي العزيز دكتور انطوان اللي لبى الدعوه رغم كل ظروفه واختلاف الوقت، وعندما يعني وصل الخبر بانه راح نقيم محاضره. شكرا الى دكتور سرهد اللي ايضا امضى ساعات في تامين الاتصال والتواصل بهذه اللحظه، هذه المحاضره والمحاضرات الاخرى. شكرا جزيلا للجميع وللمشاركين الكرام. شكرا دكتور سرهد.
شكرا جزيلا دكتور.
دكتور سرهد، يعني الاطباء البيطريين لهم دور حتى في الصحه. انا جاني بالذكر دكتور عبد الخالق القصب، هو اللي كان يشخص في معهد باستون، اتذكر كنا نروح يمه، واخوه هو المسؤول عن تشخيص، طبيب بشري مسؤول عن تشخيص الريبيس بالبشر. اتذكر طابق الرابع كان مره قرايب احد المسؤولين الكبار بلدنا، هاي اتذكر يمكن بالثمانينات التسعينات، كان واحد انصاب ونادوا باي طريقه، قالوا كلكم تقعدون خفر، ما ترجعون لبيوتكم، شوفوا له حل وتعالجوه. بالاخير قالوا يا ماكو حل، بدات الاعراض مالته بعد ما انتهت، فخلاهم المسؤول الكبير 4 أيام 5 أيام ما يرجعون لبيوتهم. اتذكر هاي الحادث، يمكن دكتور محمد اسماعيل اتذكر اخو دكتور عبد الخالق كان هو المسؤول.
اي دكتور. نعم. دكتور بس احب اوضح في شغله، يعني اللي اشار عليها دكتور مولود ايضا مال التعاون، تعاون الجهات ذات العلاقه. يمكن يدري دكتور مولود انا هم دعيتهم، يعني دعيت كل جماعتي الاطباء البيطريين على مدى 3 سنوات اني اسوي الريبيز داي، جلوبال ريبيز داي سنه ال 16 و17 و18، بس ال 19 ما صار مجال ان نسويها. كل 28 سبتمبر احنا نسوي جلوبال ريبيز داي، وادعي به كل الجهات واقدم محاضرات واحكي عن كل الشغلات واقول سووا لجان، سووا تعاون، سووا هذا، لان شغله كلش مهمه. وانا دا اوثقها ايضا بالجارك اللي هي جلوبال اليانس فور ريبيز كنترول، اللي المشروع مالته انه 2030 على اساس انه يصير اليمينيشن للريبيز. وكل سنه انا كنت اسوي، بس هسه من طلع التقاعد يعني ما حد يهتم بالموضوع. يعني هاي مشكله، انه مجرد واحد يعني يبدي لكم موضوع يدير وجهه ويروح، بعد ما حد يهتم بالموضوع، كانما الموضوع الي شخصي. هو مو موضوع شخصي، انا سلمت الرايه وقلت انا طالع، ما حد يجي يستلم ورايا ويمشي. جماعه السي دي سي، جماعه البيطره، المختبرات، وزاره الصحه، هذه امور كلش مهمه. يعني انا رحت دورتين وشاركت بمؤتمرين، وهاي كلها تعرضت هناك، والناس قالوا احنا مستعدين نساعدكم، وقدمت تقاريري للوزاره. بس يعني مع الاسف كانما هي شغله شخصيه، انه ما حد يريد يهتم بالموضوع.
والله دكتور سند، اسف بحكي يعني هوايه يمكن.
تفضل دكتور
عزيزي. هسه المشكله يعني نحن يعرفون دورنا، من يحتاجون يجون، ما عندهم شغل ما يجون. اتذكرها بالجميع بالحمى النسفيه وغيرها. بس انا اوكل على شيء من هالمحاضره والندوه. احنا ما تنجح عندنا قضيه قتل الكلاب، يعني اذا بالسموم بالستريكنين او بالطلقات الشرطي يضرب، صارت حوادث بها. انا اتذكر من زمان. هسه ناكد على شغله اللقاح البيتس بالدوجز اللي هي يعني ذبوها. هاي الحين نقطه مهمه. هو من طانا بالضبط ناجح كلش بالدوجز؟ جاكوب.
لا
بس
دكتور طانا اذا تسمح لي.
نعم
دكتور طانا.
تفضل.
هو انا يعني هذا المؤتمر الاخير اللي صار بنيسان 2018 بمدينه انسي شمال فرنسا،
نعم.
يعني كان هو التركيز جدا مهم على انه القتل يعني لا ينفع ابدا، لانه انت تقتل واحد هو راح يخلف 6 بمكانه. فهذا يعني شغله كلش يعني غير نافعه. اهم شيء هو عمليه التلقيح او التعقيم.
تعقيم هو ايه؟ هاي دكتور باسم العضاب عنده شيء بيه. دكتور باسم
هذه اهم الفقرات اللي حتى تسيطر، لانه ممنوع يقول لك لا تقول لي اقتل. ممنوع يقول اقتل.
ممنوع، لا ممنوع حد يقتل حيوان باوروبا وبامريكا بس اللقاح الجماعي يذبوه بالطيارات او بسيارات بلديه خاص، ذب هذا اللقاح. هذا ممكن باوروبا. فهذه ممكن بالعراق ايضا خلي يدرسوها خلوها نقطه من النقاط المهمه. يعني الاستنتاجات من هالمحاضره النظر في اللقاح، يعني والاشتراك مع هذا دكتور جاكوب والجمعيات او اللي يشترك بها يستفاد منها البلد، يعني ما نخليها هيك ضايعه. دكتور مولود، الحقيقه هاي النقطه مهمه ان تطلع هذه المحاضره والندوه اللي بتصير اللي احنا نحكي بها. نقطه مهمه النظر في تلقيح، يعني تلقيح الكلاب السائله. اما الكلاب اللي بالبيوت كلها الناس تخاف تلقحها ضد الريبيز ضد الستامبر، يعطوها لقاح يخافون حتى فهذه مشكله كبيره بالعراق. وايضا الدول المجاوره اللي حكي عنها لازم يبني برنامج مع الدول المجاوره للعراق ايضا تجري نفس الامور، تنسيق. فهذه
حتى الممثل مال الاو اي اي كان حاضر هو هذا المؤتمر الاخير، التقى بي بنهايه المؤتمر وقال لي انا مستعد ان اقدم لك الدعم في مجال توفير المستلزمات واللقاحات. وقال شغله شويه مهمه، قال لي اياها شويه هي مؤثره. قال لي بس ما اقدر، اكو سبونسريه هواي اقدر اجيب لك اياهم، بس اعذرني ما تستلم ولا فلس، لان اذا ادز لك الفلوس الكوربشن اللي عندكم بالبلد تطير الفلوس كل شيء ما تحصل ترى. قل لي ادز لك لقاح، ادز لك مستلزمات تاخذ. واكو نقطه مهمه دكتور انطوان، البري اكسبوجر مع التلقيح. انا دورتين اللي رحت بيها لان كان عندنا تعامل، يعني دربنا على كيفيه عمل الفحوصات، طلعنا للقرى، لقحنا الكلاب بالقرى سواء اللي خارج البيوت او بالبيوت. فاخذت كورس تلقيح بري اكسبوجر قبل ما اروح للدوره.
نعم جيد. هاي نقطة مهمة، يعني حقيقة من اللقاح هاي نقطة تلقيح كلاب السائلة. يعني البيطرة المفروض اكو واحد موجود من الشركة العامة للبيطرة يسمعنا.
ما أعرف دكتور، ما أعرف دكتور طالب كاظم يمكن من البيطرة، بدنا نحاول يفتح المايك بس المايك ما ينفتح له من الأسف.
اي المهم انه كان
دكتور طالب لا عميد كلية الطب البيطري جامعة ديالى. دكتور طالب
أهلا وسهلا به.
أهلا
قدرني أنا شوي ما أعرف.
مفروض من البيطرة يقعون قاعدين يعني خبراء هناك. والله يعني واحد يرسل لهم يا النتيجة سمعنا هيك الأستاذ جاكوب والمناقشين، يعني نهتم بهذا الموضوع
ان شاء الله. دكتور انطوان هي كل الشيء اللي ارسل لهم الفيديو اضافه الى التوصيات والاستنتاجات اللي اشاروا لها، وسبقوا انه كل الفيديوهات اللي يتم يعني ترتيبها من خلال الدكتور سرهد مشكور ارسلها للجهات ذات العلاقه، وعلى الاقل تكون كوثيقه عندهم او فد مصدر يستفادون من الملاحظات، يعني مثل ما يقولون العافيه درجات. لعله مع العلم دكتور انطوان تتذكر يعني اجراءاتنا سابقا كان لقاح البنتادوك كان يوزع حتى على العيادات البيطريه الخاصه، كان متوفر بكميات كبيره. الان مشاكل البيطره ايضا تاثر عليها وضع يعني البلد من الناحيه الماليه وتوفر يعني الامكانيات للاستيراد وتوفير هذه اللقاحات وغيرها. بس مع هذا ايضا الملاحظات القيمه اللي ذكرت نعملها توصيات ونرسلهم الفيديو بالشكل اللي ممكن ان يستفادوا ما عنده.
هسه نقطة دكتور مولود شكرا. نقطة مهمة أيضا توفير مستلزمات التشخيص، يعني مو بس في المختبر المركزي في بغداد، المفروض على الأقل 4-5 مختبرات بالعراق يتوفر لي الفلورسن أنتي بودي تكنيك، هذا الفلورسن مايكروسكوب والكونجيجيت وكلها، ويتدربون خاصين على هالتشخيص حتى تعمل يعني التشخيص يكون سليم في كل المكونات، ويصير احصائيات مضبوطه سنويه، يابا هالقد دوجز انفحصت هالقد طلعت بوزيتيف. ف يعني هذه اعتقد مو بس مختبر المركزي، واعتقد دكتوره ماجده يمكن قائمه بهالعمل انه تدرب ناس، توفير بالبصره مثل المختبر، بالموصل المختبر في الوسط بعد، يعني قد يكون والرمادي بهالمكانات قريبه من الجنوب، كربلاء، يعني كل مكان يعني اقول 5 6 هو حكى قال مو بس منطقه الوسط، يعني نحن جونا حار هم، والفيروس يعني من يغسلون لازم مبرد، يعني الراس للحيوان او البرين او اي شيء يدزون، يعني البراس هو اكثر شيء هو لازم مبرد، والفيروس ممكن يبقى بالبرين لفتره، يعني هو ريزيستنت البرين تشو يسوي تحافظ على الفيرال انتيجنز. بس انا اشوف 4 5 مختبرات، هاي واحده من النقاط ايضا بالعراق تشتغل تتكون لي بها يعني مختبرات داخل المختبر التشخيصي يكون بمختبر للريبيز.
العفو
دكتور طالب حاليا ممكن انه المايك
بس اكمل بس اكمل
تفضل دكتور مولود.
عذرا دكتور، بس لان تعقيب على الشيء اللي ذكره دكتور انطوان، عفوا دكتور طالب. حقيقه الدكتور بالنسبه للدكتوره ماجده اتذكر بوقتها قاموا يعني تدريب لقسم الكوادر وعده مستشفيات بالمحافظات، وصارت اكثر من دوره بهذا الجانب، وهي بنفس الوقت اعتقد حصلت على فرص تدريبيه بامريكا في هذا المجال او غير المجالات، واكو يعني كخبره متوفره عندهم بافضل بكثير. والدوائر البيطريه او الكادر البيطري حصل فرص تدريبيه اكثر حتى من الجامعات. بس الشيء الاخير معظم الكوادر هاي اللي تدربت اللي طلعت تقاعد مثل ما ذكر الدكتور محمد بالصحه او مثل ما مر به، وبنفس الوقت بالنسبه للدوائر البيطريه معظم اللي تدربوا وحصلوا سواء كانوا من خلال شهادات او فرص تدريبيه يعني طلعوا تقاعد بوقت مبكر، واعتقد هذا راح يعني يحدث نوع من الخلل في تقديم الخدمات البيطريه اذا ما يتم خلينا نقول اعاده او تاهيل هذه الخدمات وتقديمها امكانيات كمختبر واجراءات يعني كمعدات موجوده. بس اعتقد المواد والماتيريال اللي تتعلق بالعمله الصعبه او توفير مبالغ هذه الان اكو شحه بها. الفيلم هذا اللي انعرض اللي هو ايضا حصلنا عليه من احد مواقع التواصل، في اخر المقطع او في مقطع اخر يتم اخذ الراس يعني بعد ما يتم ذبح البقره واخذ الراس وارساله الى الجهات ذات العلاقه. بس هذا كتوضيح. شكرا دكتور.
يعني حتى الجامعات الكليات يعني مثل مختبر البيولوجي ببغداد او مختبرات اذا عندهم فلورسنت مايكروسكوب والكونجيجيت يصلون يقدرون يشخصون ما بيها. يعني انا اعتقد تساعد، خلي الكليات هي مو بس اكاديميه وكنا نشتغل كل شيء، فممكن انه تكون الكليات تساعد. عندنا كم كليه بالعراق طب بيطري؟ 14 هاي مو وايد، قد بيها مختبرات. خلوا يعني
تعتقد البايو سيفتي الموجوده بالمختبرات العراقيه ممكن انه تساعد على هيك شيء؟
والله لامينر فلو كافي، يعني لامينر فلو او بايو سيفتي كابينت اذا موجوده مضبوطه، والمعقمات الموجوده، وعندك اوتوكليف تحرق كل شيء او محرقه. يعني ما يعني شر هذا. انا اتذكر يعني المختبرات اللي اشتغلت بها بالنمسا هذا الموجود غرف خاصه بس اكو كابينه بايو سيفتي كابينت ليفل 2 ليفل 3 وممكن واحد يشتغل بها. واشتغلنا الحمى النسويه معود بلامينر فلو عادي ولا الله يعني خلانا سالمين.
الضرورات تبيح المحظورات احيانا.
ايه يعني معظورات تحتاجها، فيطلبون بايو سيفتي كابينت ليفل 2 3 كافي، ولا فلورسنت مايكروسكوب والكونجيجيت.
ما اعرف دكتور طالب موجود؟
دكتور قبل ما يدخل دكتور طالب اكو
اعتقد الفرصه للدكتور طالب.
هو ما ادري اذا موجود، حتى اذا ما موجود
هو موجود بس كل ما خطيه كل ما يفتح المايك واحد يحكي.
وين دكتور طالب؟
تفضل دكتور طالب.
السلام عليكم ورحمه الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام.
عليكم السلام.
عاشت الايادي بجهود لطيفه وحلوه وعلميه رائعة جدا حقيقة، واستضافة أستاذ من خارج القطر فشي يشار له بالبنان حقيقة. ذكر الأستاذ المحاضر بأنه عندهم هم السورس أو الريزرفوار أوف انفكشن أو الفيروس والفوكس الثعالب وإلى آخره من الحيوانات البرية. أنا أنقل لكم شاهد من هذا الموضوع سنة 2001-2002 تقريبا، واللي كنا تحت الحصار الاقتصادي الشديد. أنا ما أعرف يعني قد يجوز قلت الأغذية والشغلات اللي كانت تنذب بالأنهر وبالخارج المدينة، فبدت الحيوانات اللي هي الفوكس الثعالب والذئاب تقترب من المدن. أنا شاهد عليها، شايفة بنفسي يعني. حتى مرة قتلت مجموعة من الثعالب داخل يعني المجمع السكني مالتنا. هذا يدل، وصارت عندنا حالات كثيرة ذاك الوقت بإصابة الحيوانات الحقلية من الأبقار وغيرها من الحيوانات، وصارت أيضا حالات انتقلت للبشر من الفلاحين انصابوا وقسم ماتوا يعني حقيقة. هذا أعتقد ينطي فد إنديكيشن بأنه فعلا هو السورس والريزرفوار مال الفيروس هو بالثعالب والذئاب البرية وليست الكلاب، لكن اكسيدنتلي بتنتقل الى الكلاب. هذه يعني حقيقه ملاحظه من ميدان العمل. كان عندي عياده في تكريت كنت اشتغل هناك وكنت اشوفها في نفسي. فاعتقد هذا الموضوع ما اعرف يحتاج همنا فالتركيز عليه مثل ما الاستاذ المحاضر ركزوا عليه، اللي هم اعتقد حسب ما فهمت يعني الاصابات تاتي مصدرها من الثعالب. فاتصور يعني هذا يحتاج نوع من المتابعه في هذا الاتجاه. واني ممنون لكم اعطيتوني فرصه بعد 3-4 اخذوا فرصتي بالبدايه. موفقين ان شاء الله. دكتور انطوان استاذنا المحترم، حقيقه درستني يعني في الكليه، واذكر لا زال محاضراتك وتوجيهك. شكرا لكم، ان شاء الله موفقين وجزاكم الله خيرا.
شكرا جزيلا دكتور طالب.
دكتور ردت اركز انه الاحصائيات انه عندنا 3 محافظات هي يعني كلش الاصابات بها عاليه جدا.
عفوا رديت اعرف تعليق دكتور انطوان على هاي الحاله.
والله كل شيء ممكن دكتور، يعني كل شيء يشوفوه. يعني مثل انت قتلت فوكسس وطاع، قتلت الفوكسس، المفروض تخبر البيطره على الاقل ياخذون هاي الرؤوس مالتهم، يعني يودوها للبيطره تنفحص، يعني حتى يسوون سيرفي على الثعالب والفوكس يعني والذئاب. فأنا رأيي أنه كلها يصير بالسيرفيلنس ستاديز. أنا أعيدك جدا، وممكن أن يكون الفوكس هو الأصل، الريزرفوار، بس احنا نشوف الكلاب هي اللي تهاجم أكثر شيء البشر. ويصاب من الأبقار ويصاب. أنا أتذكر حتى يعني أتذكر محطة أبقار النصر كنت استشاري بها بالصويرة، كانت تجي ثعالب الطب للمحطة وحتى تهاجم الأبقار. يعني وياك يعني ممكن تكون هي، بس من يموت الحيوانات هو قال يعني، وانا الحيوان اللي يصاب يموت ما ظهرت عليه الأعراض. فمن نشوف جثة ثعلب، جثة كلب، جثة موجودة، مفروض البيطرة تتحرك ويأخذون هذه للتشخيص.
شكرا جزيلا دكتور أنطوان. هو الظرف كان غير مساعد، تعرف كنا في يعني تقريبا على وشك معركة يعني، فكان الظرف غير مهيئ لهذا.
نعم
شكرا.
نعم أنا وياك. هلا وعين. شفت الدكتور كريم سعدون راد يطلب، شوف موجود. تحياتي دكتور كريم سعدون، استاذ الفيرولوجي بجامعة ديالى.
اهلا وسهلا. اذا ممكن تتداخل تفضل. دكتور محمد ايضا موجود، كانت عندك مداخله وقاطعوك، تفضل.
عندي مداخله هي يعني عندنا ديالى وواسط، النسبه العظمى بها تجي وراهم بابل. ديالى وواسط حتى بالمحاضره اللي لقيتها انا بمدينه انسي، المحاضرين الايرانيين نطوا المدن بالضبط اللي ملاصقه لديالى وواسط، عندهم نسبه عاليه من الريبز. وهذا ايضا لانه هذه تعبر احيانا الغنامين وغيرهم يعبرون الحدود بدون شو اسمه، فالكلاب اللي وياهم ترعى ايضا هذه يعني من وسائط انه تنتقل يعني عدم السيطره عليها. فهالمحافظتين كانت نسبه الاصابه مالتها كلش عاليه وتواجد الريبز بها عالي ويا بابل. هذا ايضا يعني من الامور اللي يعني واحد هم لازم يركز عليها في هذه المحافظات. شكرا.
شكرا جزيلا دكتور. اكو بعد مداخلة سؤال تقدر تراسل تفتح المايك وتسأله او بالشات.
اكو دكتور كريم ماذا دكتور عفاف؟
عفوا دكتور سرهد.
تفضل دكتور.
بس على ذكر الاعداد، يمكن يعني الحالات الوفيات اللي للانسان حقيقه حصلت مصدر اللي هو كتيب مؤلفه دكتور محمود زميلنا الدكتور محمود جزار العيساوي، وموضوع من خلال يعني من خلال عمله بالبيطره، ومتطرق الى امور قدرت الان يعني استحضرها. الاصابات بالانسان ماخذها من 86 الى 2009. اللي نلاحظه بالسنوات الاخيره بدات تزداد نسبه يعني الوفيات المسجله، بالتاكيد هو ماخذها من جهات رسميه. يعني بين 2005 29 2007 22 2008 16 2009 20. وبنفس الوقت ما اريد ان اطيل على ذكر الشيء اللي ذكره دكتور محمد، وماخذ ايضا الحالات المسجله بالعراق، وبنفس الوقت اللي يعني بالدول المجاوره. مثلا بالعراق مسجل يعني اللي مؤشر 1680، ايران 4470، الاردن 370، الكويت 150، واما تركيا 5600، الهند اعتيادي 70500، سوريا 1190، السعوديه 1700. فنشوف ايضا فعلا الاصابات مثل ما ذكر دكتور محمد، احتمال انه المناطق الحدوديه تكون نسبه الاصابه بها اكثر. اللي ذكره دكتور انطوان بخصوص محطات مال الابقار، يمكن سمعته باحدى التعليقات الاوليه. ذكر لنا مدير عام محطات ابقار الدجيله اثناء عملنا بالبيطره، ذكر قال ان احنا اجرينا حمله للتخلص من الكلاب وقتها، اللي يمكن محطه الدجيله، التخلص من الكلاب اللي تكون يعني قريبه من المحطه. بس يقول بعد فتره اللي صار انه كثرت عدد الثعالب، وهذا مثل ما ذكر الدكتور طالب او ذكرت الملاحظات، حقيقه دورها تكون يمكن اكثر شراسه من الكلاب. فبوقتها لا زلت هذا رغم مرور اكثر من 20 سنه على هذه الحادثه، ذكر صاح الويل من الثعالب عندما تخلص من الكلاب. فهذا حتى بوقتها قلنا هذا هو التوازن الطبيعي، التوازن بالطبيعه. وشكرا جزيلا دكتور سرهد.
شكرا. اوكي، الحين بما انه ماكو مداخله بعد، فنتشكر من الجميع. اللينك للحضور ارسلتها بالشات، واعتقد حتى على اليوتيوب شانل خليتها، راح تكون فعاله لمده ساعه. شكرا جزيلا من الجميع، واتمنى نلتقي بكم المره الجايه في محاضره اخرى من في اختصاص الون هيلث. ايضا اختار لنا موضوع مناسب لهذا الشيء. من الممكن يكون دكتور انطوان المحاضره الجايه.
اي والله.
تحياتي للجميع.
احنا ياهو نجي ويانا نورطه.
توني عاد انا عندي هسه الكورونا ملتهي بيها يوميا. هسه فيسبوك، شوفوا الفيسبوك.
خير ان شاء الله.
محاضرتي
للجميع. شكرا جزيلا.
تحياتي وشكرا.
شكرا جزيلا دكتور
طالب. تحياتي دكتور
شكرا جزيلا للجميع.
الف شكر. شكرا لك استاذنا العزيز، شكرا جزيلا.
سرهد
شكرا جزيلا.
مع السلامه.
في امان الله.
الله معكم. مع السلامه.